Discussion today is of formidable importance, the nexus of microfinance and food security and the pivotal role that microfinance can play in addressing food security challenges, which are just looming around the corner in the shape of the next crisis. What is our level of preparedness for the next disaster? So it is extremely important how we define the intersection of microfinance and food security for Pakistan, what this metrics can offer for maximum productive outcomes. And for this, the discussion today will be very holistic and it must encompass what type of microfinance landscape do we have in Pakistan. Does it come with high interest ceiling which hurt the clientele or which hurt the poor? Does it put them into this debt trap or the poverty trap? Is it the silver bullet that has the potential to reduce the food security issues? And how much contextualized it is, especially when we talk about the agri microfinance. What kind of SWOT picture do we have? What kind of strength, weaknesses, threats and opportunities this landscape of microfinance has to offer? And also, what are the best international practices? Which interventions have been adopted over time? How workable they are? How much internal validity they came with? And how we can make use of them in the best manner. And lastly, what is the definition of digital maturity metrics for Pakistan, especially when we talk about agri-digital finance for small farmers? And what kind of touch and tech spectrum the microfinance companies are offering for the small farmers and for the agricultural landscape? So we will delve deeper into this discussion with the panelists. And for this, I would like to invite, I would like to put forth this question, that what are the primary barriers that small-scale farmers and entrepreneurs face when attempting to access traditional financial resources for agricultural development? And how does microfinance help in overcoming these barriers and provide financial access? And for this, I would like to request the economist on the panel, Mr. Khizr Saab, if he can give his perspective as an economist of what kind of scenario we have, and then we will proceed to the experts, microfinance experts.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and this thought-provoking discussion what we are planning to have. It's a very touchy issue and it's a very burning issue, the food security. But before I come to your question, I'd like to just give a very holistic picture that how alarming the situation could be in Pakistan, and if that to happen, the local lending institution, be it microfinance or banking, would have a limited role to play in this. And so first, Pakistan is a net food importing country. Last year, Pakistan imported about $4 billion of food net import. Like there was about export of about 6 billion and about close to 9 billion of imports. And 20 years ago, the gap was almost nil. So we've been importing substantially in that. And this gives you enough food for the country to survive. So we produce food, but the staple food we have, like wheat, we are consistently importing wheat as well for the past few years because our yields are not increasing and the population is growing and the consumption per capita is growing as well. So, and we're importing the palm oil as we use much of that in our food products and so on and so forth, and soya beans and other stuff like that, which goes into the feed of milking cows and which goes into the feed of broiler, which is one of the main protein provided in Pakistan. It's used to be one of the cheapest source of protein provided after this, the broiler industry thrived over the world, but because of the fiasco what happened in the last 1 year or so, that now the broiler is no longer the cheapest protein source as in. So these are the issues we need to that. If we know that the balance of payment crunch the country is facing, and every $1 billion is a pain to and we are trying to keep a current account surplus and trying to keep our growth muted, which has an implication on the poverty and the inflation, which has a link to the food security. But at a macro level, if you're not able to import, then we are going to be food insecure much quicker than what we think. You know, we say that Pakistan is very high on philanthropy. There's no doubt that the people don't sleep empty. You know, stomach might be true, but because the food is available in the country as a whole, so some people who can afford give to those who can't afford. But the country can't afford, that's a problem. So I think we need to set the tone now. Coming to your question after that, just giving that brief synopsis of the macro situation, we need to focus more on how to enhance the unit of produce we have, be it wheat, be it maize, as maize been growing successfully for the past 20 odd years, and that's one of the feed for the milking cow and broiler and other stuff, but we import other stuff as well. How to substitute that input as a feed, how to improve your yield in milk and yield in wheat and other products so we can be food secure if we have a financial crunch and the way the world is moving, the way things are. If we are not able to import food, we wouldn't be able to survive. So the lending sphere from the microfinance perspective has to work for the farmer with improved yield. That's the key to it. And of course, we have to address the poverty levels and all that. So the second point is that we are coming up with last year the inflation was about 30%. This year it's expected to 20%. Food inflation last year was close to 50% in the rural areas, and the inflation in the rural areas is consistently higher than the urban areas for the past 2.5 years in this very high inflationary environment. And the purchasing power is decreasing. Your overall GDP growth shrunk. Last year, because of floods, the large part of the Sindh and Balochistan was vulnerable in that. So we need to address that, ensure that there is enough employment opportunity for the poor people of Sindh, Balochistan, Southern Punjab, AP, and other areas where they can find employment opportunity to have enough to buy food. So that's one area they need to look into, but other area that we need to enhance the yield so that there is enough food available in the market which we can have people to sow. The other policy framework which we need to that there is a lesser government involvement in all these things. The allocation of resources within the food is not correct. We are focusing much more on the sugar and the stuff which is good, and Pakistan is one of the highest diabetic countries. So we need to focus from this to other crops where the yields are better and where they can become your staple. So that's one area we need to work on, how to innovate, what new crops we need to focus on, how to improve the yields over there, what kind of financing mechanism and schemes should come in that identify A, B, C, D crops in certain areas that they have a better yield and what kind of soil enrichment, what kind of fertilizer, what kind of other stuff is required for them. So bring those products in the market, finance those products through microfinance institutions. So that's very important thing to go. And other thing is this, because of the high unemployment and high inflation, the stagnation we were facing in the economy, how to provide the job opportunities or how to provide the earning opportunities through providing the financing through the microfinance for the poor people so they can afford the food. So there's two legs we need to address. So I stop here and we come back with the suggestions of the media. Thank you.
Sure, thank you so much. So now I'd like to invite Mr. Sabir Siddiqui Saab, Head of Sector Development, PMIC, So Alika just gave this macro synopsis of the situation, and with the stress on that lending spectrum has to lend to farmers to improve yield. And we have to innovate. So in this regard, just an extension of the previous question, that how does microfinance is helping in overcoming these barriers and providing financial access to these farmers, where we can have this capacity to not only enhance the yield but also to innovate in this domain.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for the question. Just to give you a context of what sort of financing needs are there. I mean, as we discussed in this morning as well. If you look at the 5 major crops, the total financing requirements for those crops in Pakistan is close to 2.6 trillion. And the total financing that's been available is almost half of it. And what's even more ironic is that small farmers holding less than 12 acres of land is about 90% of the 8 million farmers in Pakistan. And they're getting less than 10% of the total financing. So that's the quantum of the financing gap. And that gap actually is translating into several challenges that we just heard. We are an agriculture economy, heavily reliant on agriculture, 24% contribution to GDP. Almost 80% of our exports being driven by agriculture and related products. But yet we are importing 9 billion rupees of food every year. That's the pressure that we have on the trade that we are having. Secondly, if we look at Pakistan, for the 5 crops, rice, wheat, sugarcane, cotton and maize, we are amongst the top 10 countries in the world in terms of our production. And yet, our yields are less than half of the global averages. So that's the spectrum here. And look at the land that we're using for agriculture and look at what we are getting out of it. So that's where the real challenge is. Financing is just one important element within this entire spectrum that we need to see of how farmers, just because of their inability to raise financing, are dependent on the local parties and input suppliers, which to start with give them inferior seeds. Just look at maize, and in the last 15-20 years, just by changing the seed, the maize production has doubled in terms of its yield. And yet for other crops, we're still relying on the age-old seeds that the farmer is storing every year from its produce. So just by giving them access and the ability to buy good quality seed, there is significant impact on the yields that can be seen. Similarly, we're now talking about climate change and how climate is affecting crop patterns and how it is now a month delay in terms of its harvesting and sowing. Farmer needs advisory on this. He's still stuck on the age-old tradition of sowing those crops in a certain month, in a certain way, putting certain fertilizers, without realizing that with this climate change and with the repetitive cropping pattern that it has followed, the nutrition levels of the soil has changed, and it doesn't necessarily require 2 bags of urea and 3 bags of DAP. It may require something else. So that advisory in terms of what the soil needs and what needs to grow in is, with the pilot that we did at PMIC last year and this year, we've seen just by giving them this knowledge of what needs to go in, simple soil analysis, simple measure of the nutrition level in soils, the yields have gone up by 28%. And the enabling factor was, in addition to providing them with loans, we linked them with RegTech that would provide those services. So, in terms of financing requirements, what's important is it's not just commercial bank that have over the years drawn away from agriculture, it's microfinance institutions as well. 5 years back, if you look at the distribution of business segments created by microfinance banks and non-bank entities, it was 20% in crop. Now it's less than 10%. So just these anomalies that we're witnessing caused by climate change and other factors, the finances are now moving away from lending to crop and moving more into livestock and other segments. From PMIC's perspective, almost 65% of our portfolio is in rural areas, so it's very close to our heart to really make sure that the farmer who is responsible not just for our food security, but the contribution that it has in our economy is not left out. So, from our perspective, what we're really trying to do now is look at the entire ecosystem of agriculture, particularly from the perspective of a small farmer. And that is why we're now designing loans that can help them secure inputs, that can help them secure small farm implements. I mean, the West is moving to precision farming. We can't have that because of the small land holdings that we have per farmer. But yet now we see a lot of these small handheld implements that can come up and really help farmer in securing the produce and cutting down on the post-harvest wastages. So we're designing products for those. We're linking up with institutions that can provide farmers with advisory. And that's the package that we really want now for the MFIs and the institutions to take forward and start investing through that. And what we really are now keen is that perhaps the institutions would also need to see the amount of loans that they have designed. I mean, previously it was a 30,000-40,000 loan to a farmer, and that's it. But now if you look at the per acre requirement on wheat, it's about 50,000 rupees per acre. So even for a small farmer with 4 acres of land, you really can't help him with 50,000 rupee loans. You have to rethink and look at the holistic side of what farmer needs to make sure that the crop is good, it has good yields, and there is significant income. So from our perspective, we're working on those products. We're linking up with input suppliers, with making sure that more financing is available. We're trying to look out of the country as well, trying to secure international funding for this. So yes, the sector really needs to think again in terms of whether just because of this climate-related issues and challenges with agriculture, do we really want to leave them out and look at other places, or is this something that Pakistan really has a competitive advantage in?
Thank you very much. So, I would now like to turn to Mr. Aftab Alam, Chief Business Officer of Khushaali Microfinance Bank. So, Mr. Sathik Sir from PMIC just highlighted a number of dimensions that go beyond the simple act of financing. So, mainly my question is about the financial product design. For example, Khushaali Bank is a huge, massive portfolio of agricultural finance, and how this mechanism or the financial product design can be rolled out that factors in the climate action or the disaster resilience lens, or of course this enabling environment where they can have access to knowledge, where information asymmetry is stacking. So how can banking institutions and microfinance institutions can collaborate with agricultural stakeholders to design tailored financial products that support sustainable food production and distribution, and what role Khushaali or the microfinance banking sector can play in that?
Thank you so much. I think yes, there is a huge scope for collaboration. Microfinance institution can foster effective collaboration with various agriculture stakeholders and the Agriculture Extension Department, Ministry and financial institutions and regulators. The product development stage starts with the need assessment. So the microfinance institution and microfinance banks, they with themselves or with the help of larger platforms like PMN, State Bank of Pakistan, SECP, or other similar bigger platforms, they can collaborate with them, and they can contact with farmers, consumers, exporters, distributor of agriculture produce, to understand basically the need of the market, the need of the farmer, and then they can in the process they can develop different type of value chain products with different stakeholders in this ecosystem. They can have a value chain with the distributors, with the marketer, with the producers, and with the input suppliers. In this way, the tailor-made product can be developed after knowing the need of the segment. Plus, through this collaboration actually, and through this process, we can understand that what actually what Saqib was highlighting the problems in the overall agriculture system, that it's not just the supply side and the financial thing which impacts the productivity and produce. So through collaboration with the agri extension departments, with agriculture research institutions, and with the farmer organizations, we can better understand those problems, and we can discuss this with the academia and with the research institution, that what actually could be the solution for these problems, and subsequently the product which meet the need of the day, which are technologically more approachable and accessible, because these days even in rural areas and agriculture sector, almost everyone has a mobile phone and access to cellular phones. So different type of digital products and conventional products can be developed through these collaborations.
So now coming to Dr. Somu, CEO of the Microfinance Foundation. So at the closure, panelists referred to technologically approachable and accessible, and also the digital product and technology to leverage solutions for food security. So in what ways technology has been leveraged to enhance the reach and impact of microfinance in addressing food security challenges, and how can you share some innovative technological solutions, because we have been working in the landscape of SEN, especially in Thabakar concerning livestock. So what is this technological and food security nexus that is in action, and that's can be a workable phenomenon for Pakistan, especially in the rural areas and economically disadvantaged areas?
I think there are two things that I will say first before going to answer this question. One thing, if we want to work with the farmers, we have to go back to the farmers. That is one of the most important crucial issues now. We have all retreated back from the rural areas where the farmers are. We have come back to the urban semi-entrepreneur, which is yet to be entrepreneur. I think the landscape of the clientele has changed in the microfinance industry. Let's accept it. The second thing I refer to a research which we did in 2004, which is a little older. That was basically for the food security analysis by an institution outside in UK. They, when they went to the rural areas, they came up with the data that all families who secure loan from any source, whether they were related by the loan or not, but they were food secure, because they would use that money that they took as a loan to buy the basket of food. And now there's an impression that the money is not there in the rural areas. The liquidity is short. And then when the liquidity is short, most of the farmers, they are short on food itself. So that's the aspect. And where is the technology? I think in Pakistan there's more than 80 million people who have this functional phone. They have not their phone. And so is in the rural areas. Everybody almost have the phone. And you know what we see now, there's a potential trend that people are now, linking it with the market, particularly the farmers. They know what is the horticulture market in the market. What's the rate of vegetables? What are the rate of this and that? Where is the good market? Which market is more attractive? So I think that information they are seeking, they are taking, and they are leveraging. Sale is in the, you refer to the partner. They ask the rates. They know where is the market in Karachi or Hyderabad where they can sell their at a better price and on a cash transaction. So I think the technology used on their own is there. We have been innovating it. We have been acquiring the clients, loan acquisition through all this digital. People have more faith and confidence in digital technology now, because one thing which I think in people's mind now, there's an awareness that anything which has gone into the machine, whatever data, that is not going to them in their own context. So I think they have faith, they have confidence in technology. However, this technology use has to be promoted by the microfinance institutions. Now, microfinance institution has an issue. Because of the inflation and the interest rate, it's affordable. The farmer, whether it's the technology or not, farmer has limited affordability, particularly with the high price terms. Secondly, there's a collateral issue, the guarantee issue. I think the farmers normally, they don't have guarantee. They have only one thing which they can pledge is the crop. And microfinance industry, as against the RT or middleman, they don't take crop as a guarantee. They take tangible guarantee. So I think that is the second obstacle, whether technology is there or not. Third is a liquidity. So I don't see any problem with awareness, with education, with the need. They are all there, and the technology is there. But the other factors, which industry has its own problem, which I think is a major obstacle to reach the farmers. And see, somebody in the morning they were referring that we have 20% portfolio of agriculture. Though this was on paper, now it's a digital, it would have more or double, because it's a digital era. What has happened? It is shrunk to 2 to 3%. Why? Because there's a climatic issue, and everybody knows now on the weather, they know that tomorrow is rain, tomorrow is the heat, tomorrow is water scarcity, the channels is going to be shut for 15 days, so I will not have water for my crop. And the water scarcity is another area where there's a risk. Microfinance institutions do not take major risks now in the world, financing the agriculture in particular. However, there has to be a chain. There has to be a supply chain, there has to be other money stakeholders come together. And, there has to be parts where everybody gets their own role. But what you can do with the water scarcity, what you can do with the climate change, what you can do with this inflation, what you can do with this kind of this liquidity issue. Since last 2-3 years, what we have been observing, the RT who used to give the inputs, on the guarantee of the farm input to come, product to come, and then there was distribution. The fertilizer distributor, the seed distributors, they were all NBP. Since the prices have gone up, this lending intake has reduced. Now technology is there, they know they're going to, so people don't go. They don't go to the distributor because they will charge on their own, and this will be unaffordable. So I think agriculture has become very complex now. It requires support. It requires subsidy. It requires insurance. It requires some very innovative thing other than digital technology. How to involve, how to go back to the farmer, particularly the 90% farmers are 90% farmer, they are, I would say as a layman and coming from a farming community, I would say they are abundant now. They have not been able to access even to the banks, the microfinance banks. So I think as an industry, we need to think about, along with the digital thing, along with supply chain, along with everybody's mind, how to go back and be connected with the farmers.
Thank you very much. So now I would like to invite Syed Jadari Shah, MD, SAFCO Microfinance. And so your microfinance company also operates in the landscape of sin, and also it's the nexus of agriculture and livestock. And just like since Dr. Sonu highlighted many challenges, like it's not the yield or the output, but it's the liquidity, climate change, and also going back to the farmers at community level. So coming to the policy angle, if we dig into the policy design, what kind of regulatory framework that is required? I mean, your own experience about the ground realities, and how policy makers and regulatory bodies they can support the integration of microfinance into food security strategy to achieve sustainable and inclusive development. What are the loopholes? What is lacking, and how this can be integrated into the design?
Thank you, Dr. Faria. I think poverty alleviation is all about getting the food security. And food insecurity is particularly a fundamental issue of the area where we are operating, and particularly in Pakistan as well. As far as the data or statistics is concerned, around the 10% of the world population is affected of the food insecurity. And recent World Food Organization's study is mentioning that around 850 million people are suffering with the hunger, and they are spending their night in a day so far. So particularly the microfinance is all about to apart from diversification and growth and the scale we have, but still we have not addressed the fundamental issue of the food insecurity. Just because there are many multiple dimensions that we are not addressing together as an implementer, as well as the policy maker and regulatory framework so far. Like, individually, there are many case studies that we have impacted about the microfinance particularly. But as a whole, when we look at the figures that we are impacting so far, it is not particularly as a visible that we are making so far to disseminate particularly the impact of the program along with the microfinance institution as well as regulators or the policy makers in it. The rural area, particularly of the Pakistan, or where we are working so far, it is totally agri-economy based area in which a lot of land is available but not for the cultivation, just because that there are many water and security issues, water shortfall also there are many, the seed particularly issues and hybrid diversification, particularly in that way. So, the policymakers must, take into consideration the agriculture sector, particularly as a priority sector for the growth and, ensuring the food availability, particularly in the rural areas as well as the sector so far.
Almost 5 billion or more than 5 billion people are being added to the country's population every year. Right? Countries in Europe, in Norway, or Sweden, and the Middle Eastern countries, including Qatar, Oman. Qatar की population जहाँ पे FIFA World Cup हुआ था last year, is 2.6 billion. Entire country is 2.6 billion. Pakistan, we are growing the country by 5 billion a year. So the requirement of Pakistan for not, we are talking about SDGs, जो कि जब agree हुए थे, जो उस वक्त जो population थी और जो उस वक्त हमारी facilities थी. But with this 5 million population getting added every year, the requirement for infrastructure, for housing, for health, for education, food security, it's mind-boggling, honestly. And it is something that needs to be addressed by the policymakers, by the private sector, together on a war footing. If we don't address this, we talk about our population, our youth population, which is between 60% youth in this country. If we don't have that education facilities, we don't have proper hygiene and health facilities. I think some of our ministers and earlier talked about, Finance Minister Nasa used to talk about this stunted growth, PM talked about this stunted growth. 40% of the born are stunted in terms of when they grow. It's a huge challenge for the country. It's a huge challenge for the country. Unfortunately, if we don't address this, SDGs aside, I don't think there's a very bright future for us. So altogether, I think it's a challenge. We need to address this issue of war footing, not just housing, but education, health, infrastructure, everything. So with that, I think a lot to think about, a lot of, at least, not just for private sector, but for policy makers as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sir. I think your last enormous note is much needed. Essentially, we're talking about habitat. Habitat for our people, habitat for our country, habitat for our planet. I think we all need to realize that we can no longer expect to live in the same habitat that we are used to. It is going to change. Thank you very much for mentioning the floods. The climate change, if nothing else, is going to change all of our habitat, and it is much needed to be prepared and to respond accordingly. And actually, UNDP is very excited to see some of the innovative work that's happening in SIM. It's a privilege to be part of that enterprise, public-private, that the SIM government is kind of leading post-flood. We see a lot of hope and exciting innovation in the development sector in that. Can I quickly, because on the subject of climate change, disaster-induced need to change habitat solutions, including low-cost housing, I want to shift to the business of insurance. Why? Because in UNDP, we are now increasingly looking at insurance from a disaster risk financial coverage. Insurance not just for the sake of insurance, but how insurance can actually play a very dynamic role in providing climate change induced, economic fragility induced, financial coverage to support. So can I request Mr. Mohammed, can I request Mr. Zainul Haq to share his findings?
Thank you, Zee. It was an interesting discussion that we had in our panel. Pick up from the summary so far as well. Framework for looking at disaster risk or disaster risk financing and through an insurance lens, it's more of a mindset thing in Pakistan than anything else. The concept we have typically, again, and I'll keep drawing parallels with what we see outside microfinance and then in microfinance. The typical view on insurance is that if I have to get a loan, the lender will make me get this insurance. And so it's a cost that is backed on at the end of all the important things that are happening. So, I need to get a loan for my business or my house or whatever. And then in one of the conditions it says, must get insurance for X, Y. And then the view becomes, okay, because it's a checkbox that has to be marked or has to be ticked, then I should go and find wherever it is cheapest. Whether the vendor finds me someone or I should go in the market and find someone. And it's a cost that has to be borne, so the lower the better. Terms and conditions apply, of course, insurance is famous for its fine. The framework that we need, or the mental framework, with my bias, that we need to adopt as well is insurance is something that underpins other activities. And so I look across at all the other SDGs. I'm of course going to focus more on number 13, but looking at low-cost housing, looking at life on land, looking at financial inclusion and gender equality. All these things, there are adjacent or niche use cases for insurance to underpin efforts in those areas. Looking at housing finance or the kind of resilient housing that Sasha mentioned as well, it's something that often goes unaddressed when we talk about climate impact. That the climate impact on infrastructure, not just on crops, not just on agriculture, but the impact on infrastructure. And that includes houses, that includes, like we saw in the floods last year, things like telecom poles that lead to a loss of connectivity between interior Sindh and Karachi or the rest of the country. Life, of course, on the agri side, it's as plain as day. Livestock, crop, massive suffering on both accounts. But then we also go into other areas where climate impact, so far the discussion that we're having, has not reached out. Key among those I find are loss of income in the undocumented sector. And that relates primarily to women. We already have the concept that, and this is urban and rural everywhere, that work done in the domestic setting by women in their own households goes unaccounted for in the economy anyway. So all of that is just, in any case, that's gone. But beyond that, maids, home helpers, this is also part of the undocumented. We've seen use cases, very fascinating use cases in India recently, where coverage was taken out to provide loss of income support due to excessive heat. The idea was that the temperature gets so high that these women who work as laborers in some segments, who work as maids, nannies, etc., they're unable to leave their house and walk to where they work or to walk to get a bus, etc., because it is just so hot. And these sorts of use cases are something that were not possible 10, 15 years ago. The possibility now exists that you have an index-based coverage, people subscribe to it, either through some sort of workers' association, through an NBP like a microfinance institution, or any other thing, even a government level, these things can be done. And the compensation is immediate, and the compensation is real, in the sense that it is a compensation for loss of real income. This was one of the things that we discussed at my table as well. We had practitioners from Microfinance, non-life and life insurance. And we're seeing that this discussion on the impacts of climate, as we talk about frameworks, one of the beauties of frameworks is that it provides a way of thinking about things we're already doing. And you can see that any person, in this room, out in the villages, out in the deep interiors of any problems that we have, people are trying to adapt to the reality of their situation. But because we are unable to document it, we put it in a way that makes it easy to understand, we are unable to provide a solution. And so these two things are also of particularly great importance. We suffer, as the insurance sector, and essentially we know very little about the people who are insured. The information we get again on the conventional side is this is the loan amount, that's what the factory is, this is the nameplate, and this is the size of the loan. So please just give us insurance. When we come into the microfinance sector, and we know that the granularity of data is far, far superior to what we get with commercial banks. In terms of household income, number of temperature, we are seeing an effect on milk output for dairy animals. And these are primarily your cash generating assets for anyone operating in a rural setting. And particularly for women who are responsible for taking care of those animals. So these are things that are coming to light now. But still, the undercurrent is, if the data is not there, the solution will never come. It will never come. Because you need to know the scale of people who are affected, where they are, and then you can design an intervention. So we discussed some elements which I found particularly interesting on the life side. This phrase that was used, that will make an attitude towards a saving culture. And one of the things that we worked on, interestingly, by two of the participants' organizations themselves, were that personal savings are being used to supplement microfinance for businesses. So they were giving examples of what they've seen in Bangladesh, which both replicated here, which is that microfinance borrowers there, again, primarily women or largely women, they use microfinance lending at whatever market rates are for their business and for their business alone. But at the same time, whether that is inbuilt through their lender and their contributory scheme, they keep on building up a savings account separately. The idea is, if there is a climate-induced shock, like a flood, or any other thing that happens to their business, this personal savings is separate from that. And so again, in terms of a mental framework, I found this to be excellent. That my business lending is separate, and this savings is for if something goes wrong with that business, we have this to tie us up. It's something that I feel has been sorely lacking in Pakistan, where we see and what we hear, of course, from research papers put out by the microfinance industry, that people are only a few bad months away from slipping back in poverty. This of course is not a generalization, but many people are a few bad months from slipping back in poverty. And so then building this kind of buffer in this particular use case, they were building this in as part of the loan repayments. They said this much amount every month is going into your voluntary savings scheme. They do call it voluntary, although if it's built into a markup, I imagine there's lines of credit, but the concept is that you build this element up, they then the life insurance operator or the savings operator keeps building that up as a separate savings scheme. And I found that to be an excellent use case, something that I hope really spreads around here. Of course, on the same side, as on agriculture, there are solutions available to allow people to invest in better agriculture techniques, more resilient seeds, more resilient, better use of fertilizer, and higher quality inputs, so that they're able to actually evolve their core business practices. And all the while, the insurance is there to protect downside risk. So I'll just touch on a couple of them. This parametric loss of input that I mentioned. We have similar solutions, index-based for crops. There's a reduction in operational expenses, collateralizing of livestock using digital identification and insurance policies. And then they also mentioned conversion of loans from just MSME to more resilient housing, going towards better construction to be less funded. And this micro savings, which I find very exciting.
The microfinance banks have now come into the play, and a lot of institutions have come about, which has changed the game in terms of bringing in new products, expanding the market, and doing innovation. And of course, then we have the IPOs and some big, large IPOs happening around the world. And so the competition has also increased in the microfinance industry. So with that, I turn to my first question to Adnan and ask you, what is the investment opportunity in Pakistan for the microfinance industry that you feel to raise the funds, and more particularly to talk about the factors that are to be considered.
They say whenever you're opening a talk or giving any speech, you should not start off by quoting stats or numbers. But that's exactly what I'm going to do. So that number is $200 billion US. So that's the amount of funds that will be utilized by microfinance by 2026 in the entire world. And the reason I mentioned that number is that
That takes care of one side of the equation, which means that the investor and funders are there if you want to raise that fund. That's the international perspective. Now, the other thing that is very important to know here is that there has been a gradual shift in microfinance from donor or subsidized based funding. Now it's moving towards investor based funding, whether that's like equity investment or debt investment. Now, when we look at Pakistan, we all know what the challenges are, what has happened over the last couple of years in Pakistan. So I don't need to elaborate what is happening over there. For international investors, the biggest challenges are transferability and convertibility, which means that it's very difficult to take fund out of funds. But if we take a look at like the overall horizon of Pakistan, so somebody was saying in the last panel, we have 250 million people in Pakistan. Yes, we should have ways to control our population, but that also makes us a very large population. Out of those 250 million, only 10 million people avail microfinance services. So as far as like the size of the pie is concerned, there is a lot of room for growth. On the infrastructure side, we have almost everything in place. So in Pakistan, we have Nagra in place for adaptation. We have 190 million biometric verified SIMs. We have 125 million plus 4G users. And even if you talk about our branchless banking side, so in Pakistan, every single day, 10 million transactions take place. And if I compare it to India, the number is 100 million transactions on phone pay, Paytm, and things like that. So we are not that far behind when it comes to infrastructure. But for some reason, it has not been utilized to the fullest of extent when it comes to our infrastructure. So there is a lot of opportunity in terms of growth, in terms of innovation, and in terms of collaboration with international as well as local players. So when you're talking about like active borrowers, as I mentioned, we only have like 10 million. But people who have actually borrowed from the system at one time or the other were unique borrowers. So that number is close to 23 million. So which means even half of the people who have used our services are at this moment not our customers. So we can like pretty much double the size of our overall lending portfolio in the customer circumstances. In terms of like regional contracts, if you talk about Bangladesh, because that has been like set as the role model in microfinance. So the quantum of total loan portfolio in Bangladesh is close to $15 billion. In India, that number is $37 billion. In Peru, that number actually stands more than Pakistan, which is like close to $3 billion. In Pakistan, it's only like 510 million rupees, and depending on which day's exchange rate you're taking, it's less than $2 billion in its entirety. So as far as like growth opportunities are concerned, as far as like overall landscape is concerned, we have the right infrastructure in place, and we have like the people who sort of indulge or involved in microfinance network in terms of like lending and savings or insurance, whichever product you're talking about. So there's like a very large sort of set of people available for these products in Pakistan. One of the recent conversations I had with an international investor, you must have heard the name LOLC Sri Lanka. So they have recently acquired Pakistan in Pakistan, and they have their operations in 27 countries throughout the world for microfinance. And I asked them, like, what is it that you look at as an international investor when you're looking at any opportunity to invest? And the simple reason was we go into an economy or a country when we see that there is size to expand, and there is reason or there is room for innovation. So the countries like Bangladesh, India, Peru, some of the others that I quoted, so the rapid expansion there came and there was a lot of collaboration between, let's say, fintech and traditional microfinance banks and other service providers. So I think in Pakistan, the overall environment and the size of our population and people who can be brought in or who can be our customers as microfinance and things exist over there, which can be a very lucrative thing for any investor that is for an investor looking at Pakistan.
Right. Thank you, Adnan. So Adnan is very confident. He's happy with the current infrastructure, and good news is that $200 billion dollars are available to the microfinance industry, for investment, which means also good news for Pakistan as well. So we need to buckle up. And with that, I move on to Farhan, who's joining us online. He's from the IFC, and we will ask him that, what he feels is the business case for Pakistan, and what kind of factors does IFC look into whilst investing in Pakistan or even the US around the world, So over to you, Farhan. Thank you for joining us. I guess I'll move on till the system gets sorted out to Barak, and Barak, tell us now what you feel, is the investment landscape in Pakistan, and what are the factors that an investor generally would consider for investment into Pakistan, and what can be done in that area.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. Well, the microfinance sector of Pakistan has achieved a significant milestone by crossing 500 billion in gross loan portfolio by end of Q1 of 2023, with an active borrowers of 9.3 billion. Well, this 9.3 billion borrowers is nearly one-third of the potential market, which is close to 30 million, as per the study of PMN, which was published years ago. And perhaps, as per latest estimates, this number is even much larger than the original one. And two-thirds of that number is still untapped. And you can see how big the size of pie is. And there are huge investment opportunities around in this sector. Two-thirds of the potential market is still unserved. Well, there are certain areas that needs to be considered by the microfinance investors while they are looking at working with microfinance institutions. Either they are providing debt financing or they are providing capital financing. So I will share some of the critical areas that needs to be considered by these investors. The primary area that they need to look up is the entity's corporate structure and its legal framework in which they operate. It's very important to have a clear understanding of what the entity is, in which regulatory framework that it operates, and what are the applicable reporting requirements on that institutions. Then they need to look at the governance structure of the entity that includes composition of board, how diverse the board is, how competent the board is, and how diverse the management team is, and how diverse the management team is, and how there are the committees, subcommittees at the board level and at the management level, as well as the quality of external audit is also very important. This external auditor, the QCR rating or the SPP rating, and in SPP rating we have three categories: A category, B category, C category. And then another area that needs to be considered is the social and financial rating of the institutions. And I'll touch upon that area. Cost stable entities rating is, and then internal control mechanisms of the institutions, how well they are defined, and what are the management information system that is available to shape the required information to the vendors as and when required by the investors. And the institutions, looking at the institutions' strengths and limitations is also one of the areas that investors will also look at. Institutional historical performance is another area that investors should look at that area. And then institutions' openness to share and exchange information with the investors is also very important. At times, the institutions feel reluctant in sharing and exchanging information. Sharing and exchanging the actual and true information to the vendors. I think this is not a good idea to have to hide some information that the investors are looking at. So these are some of the areas that I think that needs to be considered by microfinance investors. Another area which I would like to mention is the industry should also understand the asset structure of the entities. Like in non-bank's case, the microfinance loan portfolio is one of the single largest assets of the company, and the investors' expectations of having tangible collateral or cash collateral, they expect to have some kind of tangible or cash collateral. That is not the case in the microfinance. I think it's a mutual understanding of each one should know each other. There should be a level of trust, transparency, and openness. And these all are very important to have a long-term relationship for the investors. And all of this information should be available in your publications, in your annual reports, in your on your websites, as well as in your financials. So this will lead to a greater trust of confidence on the institutions in general, and as on the sector as a whole. Okay.
Thank you, Bharat. Yes, indeed, good governance is something